Billions of years ago, another planet smashed into Earth. An event of this epicness could have created our moon. It also could have brought alien life to our planet. What evidence of this planet still exists on Earth today? Could there be life deep inside the Earth's surface? And could that life be an advanced civilization of humanoid aliens? This is What If, and here's what would happen if aliens are living inside the Earth. 4.5 billion years ago, Theia, a protoplanet the size of Mars, struck our young Earth. This collision scattered pieces of both planets into space, and many scientists argue that these pieces eventually coalesced into our moon. But what happened to the rest of Theia is still a mystery. The existence of blobs of material inside Earth's mantle, known as low shear velocity provinces, could be evidence that parts of Theia fused with Earth. These chunks are up to 1,000 kilometers in height and several times that in width. They sit below Africa and the Pacific Ocean, straddling Earth's core like a pair of headphones. But other theories, some dating back centuries, suggest a completely different explanation of what exists under the surface. A lush tropical paradise for aliens. The Earth consists of 4 layers: the crust, the mantle, and the outer and inner core. But there hasn't been any successful exploration below the crust, so there's much we don't know about the realities below the surface. This has led to spectacular speculation like the hollow Earth theory. According to this theory, our planet could be a series of nested spheres centered around a central core. In between these shells, atmospheres could exist that are capable of supporting life. In the 17th century, Edmund Halley, the scientist who discovered Halley's Comet, backed this theory. Many others have added to it, suggesting a small sun could be hanging in the center of the Earth, and plants, animals, and humans could be living there. And not just humans, but a race of superhumans. Immortals who possess sophisticated technology to build hundreds of subterranean cities. But if there were aliens inside the Earth, what would the conditions for life be? Could the inside of our planet be a luscious paradise? Or a hot, hellish dump? If you were to visit one of the low shear velocity provinces, you'd have to go 2,900 kilometers below the surface. Here, you'd be surrounded by magma or liquid rock, with temperatures as high as 3,700 degrees Celsius. And the weight of the crust and mantle above you would increase the pressure to over 237,000 times the atmospheric pressure, on the surface of the Earth. Whatever life you find here would need to exist in these extreme conditions. And these life forms would need to evolve to extract oxygen directly from the magma, or live without it. They'd need to survive without any sunlight. Radiation would be the primary energy source. And lucky for them, the radioactive decay of uranium, thorium, and potassium in the Earth's crust and mantle already account for the primary source of heat in the Earth's interior. There could be all kinds of undiscovered creatures down there, but until you could withstand the pressure and heat to find out, we'll never know. There are billions of planets in the universe that theoretically can support life. But so far, we haven't discovered any aliens out there. Maybe the reason is we're just looking in the wrong places. What if alien life isn't anything like the life we know of? What if it doesn't need water or oxygen? What if it can withstand incredibly hot temperatures or very acidic environments? And what would we need to search for to finally find it? This is What If. And here's what would happen if alien life was silicon-based. There's one thing that your DNA, a diamond, and a rubber duck have in common. They're all made of carbon. Carbon is one of the most abundant elements in the universe. On Earth, it's also the primary building block of all life. Carbon is so special because its atoms can make 4 bonds with another element, oxygen, and form long chains of atoms called polymers. But there's another element that can do the same trick: silicon. Not only is silicon chemically similar to carbon, it also makes it on the list of the most plentiful chemicals found in the universe. Potentially, silicon could be a building block of organic alien life. And we might find that life in our own solar system. A candidate for hosting a silicon-based alien life is hiding among the moons of Saturn. Titan, the biggest of these moons, has an atmosphere that's 95% nitrogen and 5% methane. It has no oxygen, and any water it has is frozen solid because Titan receives only 1% of the amount of sunlight the Earth does. But silicon-based life forms wouldn't need any water. Instead, they could use liquid methane as the galactic elixir for their existence. The lack of oxygen would also be essential for such life to emerge. Here's why. When carbon unites with oxygen or oxidizes, as it does during a fire, it turns into a gas, carbon dioxide. Now, when silicon oxidizes, it becomes silicon dioxide, or silica, which is a solid and not a gas. If Titan had oxygen in its atmosphere, silicon would immediately turn into rock, and no life could possibly begin in that state. But Titan's atmosphere doesn't contain any oxygen, giving silicon-based life a chance. What would this life look like? How big would the silicon species be? Would they build their own civilization? Or invent their own language? Well, most likely, if there is silicon-based life out there, it would be in the form of microbes, and not animal-sized organisms that you can see with your own eyes. Scientists generally agree that any silicon-based life would need intense heat to survive, so most likely you'd have to dig deep under the surface of Titan to find it. Because of the extreme cold on Titan's surface, a living being would live somewhere close to Titan's core, where it's hot. And hey, there are many planets out there. Some of them might just have the right conditions for non-carbon-based life to thrive. Because silicon doesn't get along with oxygen, the metabolic processes of a silicon-based organism would have to be entirely different from ours. We don't know if it's even possible, just as we don't know if anything strictly silicon-based would have a DNA. But maybe we shouldn't try applying our science to alien life we've never encountered and planets we haven't thoroughly explored. Earth's conditions don't really give silicon any chance to form into a life form. But if one day aliens came down to visit us here on Earth, they would probably change everything we know about what living organisms could be made of. What if you found out that you had a long-lost relative? And what if that long-lost relative was from a different planet in our galaxy? And what if this faraway planet was home to billions of humans, just like Earth? But these humans don't look anything like us because they're from the future. Could aliens be future versions of humans? How far ahead of us would they be? How much would they have evolved? Would we be able to understand each other? And what would meeting future humans mean for humanity on Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if aliens were future humans. In 1947, a mysterious object crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico. You all know this story, but could it really be aliens? The mysterious object was officially declared to be a U.S. Army Air Force balloon. But then, decades later, U.S. Navy Commander George W. Hoover, who had top-secret clearance, revealed that the mysterious crash involved time-traveling humans. Somehow, these future humans had developed the technology to overcome the technological limitations that prevent us present-day humans from making the same type of trip. Some theories suggest that these future humans travel back in time in order to understand their biological past. Maybe these same time travelers helped our ancestors to make huge leaps in scientific and technological knowledge in a relatively short amount of time. But if any of these theories are true, should we be prepared for another alien-human visit sometime in the near future? And what might we expect from this close encounter of the third kind? If aliens, future humans, were to come and visit us again, they would probably look similar to how they appear in movies. Like us, they'd still walk on 2 feet, but their heads and their eyes would be much larger. This fits with predictions of how present-day humans will continue to evolve. We can expect our heads to be bigger and our upper skull to become more rounded to accommodate a larger brain. And as our civilization advances enough for interplanetary travel, our eyes would get bigger so we can see better in dimmer environments that are further away from the sun. Future humans might also find a way to slow the aging process. So it would be possible to make several trips to places thousands of light years away within one lifetime. If we want to travel somewhere that's 60,000 light years away, and if our technology could do it, then it would be a 60-year flight for anyone on board. But when they got back to Earth, 60,000 years would have passed. We'd like to think that humans of the future would solve this problem so they could visit Earth and come home to tell their family and friends about their trip. But if future humans find a way to live for thousands of years, would that lead to a massive overpopulation on whichever planet they inhabit? Well, chances are, if they make it possible to live that long, they will probably succeed in optimizing their existence before that. Their civilization would undoubtedly be a lot more efficient than ours. The reason being is that they could be centuries, if not millennia, ahead of us in evolutionary terms. Future humans would be a lot smarter, and they'd have better technology to maximize their space and live in densely populated worlds without producing the same high levels of pollution that we do on Earth. In fact, you could bet that future humans wouldn't just have better technology, they'd be technology. Just like some humans today have implants to perceive sound or to detect atmospheric pressure, the humans of the future would likely have dozens of technological implants to make their lives easier. Think about everything your cell phone does for you. Now, imagine you could command it with your thoughts and that it would only be a small chip in your brain. A chip or implant like that might also explain why those who claim to have encountered aliens have said that the aliens spoke to them in their native language. Could future humans simply have automatic language translators implanted in their brains? Or would humans of the future evolve past different languages? instead using one universal language, like Esperanto. Something is emerging from the Mariana Trench, and it does not belong on this planet. If aliens lived in the deepest place in the ocean, what would they look like? How would they communicate with one another? And what would happen if we dared to contact them? This is What If, and here's what would happen if there were aliens at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. There's a reason why the idea of aliens living at the bottom of the sea keeps popping up in popular culture. Many of us are far more afraid of what lies down there than whatever's looking down at us from up in space. After all, 80% of the ocean is still unmapped and unexplored. We have better maps of the Moon, Mars, and Venus than we do of our seafloor. The most mysterious part of our oceans is the Mariana Trench. Its deepest point, the Challenger Deep, stretches 11 kilometers down. The Mariana Trench is anything but a great vacation spot. No light is able to reach its bottom, and temperatures are just a few degrees above freezing. Not to mention its crushingly high water pressure. So, how could aliens survive the deepest spot in the ocean? The water pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is over 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure that you're used to at sea level. This kind of pressure would crush anything, even the toughest deep-sea robots we've ever built. But some living things managed to adapt and thrive under such pressing conditions, like translucent snailfish and sea cucumbers. The Heidel snailfish, known as the deepest living fish, flourishes at depths of over 8 kilometers. Unlike you, deep-sea fish don't have pockets to store air in their bodies. That oxygen inside your lungs is what gives you the feeling of pressure whenever you take a dive. No air means this fish has a higher tolerance to the weight of all that water above it. Whatever aliens were lurking down below would share the same characteristic. Storing air just wouldn't be their thing. But what would they do for food? Well, it's likely they'd imitate their seafloor neighbors once again. Deep-sea creatures gorge on the decaying remains of microbes, algae, or animals from above. Our sunken ships might be their version of a surprise buffet. Any extraterrestrial life down at the pit of the trench would probably eat similar food. They'd burrow into the biggest carcasses they could find and consume what's left from the inside out, like a giant hagfish does. Or they might possess enormous mouths and expandable stomachs, allowing them to catch and digest large quantities of food as they move. And those big mouths of theirs would also be filled with long fangs pointed inward. This would enable them to catch and hold on to other deep-sea creatures or, any other prey that just so happens to dive a little too far from the surface. Hey, don't judge them. In a habitat as precarious as the Mariana Trench, aliens would need to capitalize on any and all sources of nutrition. They'd also have to go the extra mile in order to let one another know that they're out there in the pitch dark. That's because sunlight can only travel up to 1 kilometer into the ocean. Anywhere deeper than that, and you wouldn't be able to see a thing. So, how would our underwater aliens put the notice out that they're around? Well, 2 ideas: by sound and by light they produce themselves. Like fireflies, deep-sea creatures are able to produce and emit their own light, thanks to a process called bioluminescence. With it, aliens would be able to connect with each other through specific lighting patterns. For long-distance communication, they could send out sound waves across enormous distances in the water, like the humpback whale, who's able to sing in the Caribbean and be heard off the west coast of Ireland, 6,400 kilometers away. Now, what would first contact with this underwater species look like for us? Well, we'd have to get there first. We'd need a vessel strong enough to withstand the constantly intensifying pressure. The tiniest of cracks would squash you and your submarine faster than you can say human jam. Once down there, we'd have to take into account that living at the bottom of the sea would be like living on another planet. If aliens existed in the otherworldly depths of the Mariana Trench this entire time, they may not want to be friendly neighbors. And the darkness alone would make it difficult to locate and study our subjects. Before approaching these extraterrestrials, we'd have to assess their communication style first, slowly and patiently. We'd need to understand how they interact with their environment, too. That is, assuming they don't feel threatened by our presence and decide to do something about it. Trust goes both ways when you're trying not to be crushed or eaten in the name of science.
Houston, we have a problem. The ship is experiencing engine malfunction. Hyperdrive not functioning. Something's wrong.
This is What If, and here's what would happen if you crashed on an alien planet. You've traveled thousands of light years through interstellar star systems, and now you're stranded on a planet you know nothing about. As long as you've got oxygen, water, and food aboard your spaceship, you should stay inside and figure out what you've got going on around you. But your supplies wouldn't last forever, so the clock would be ticking. Now, you didn't crash on an alien world just to die. Your mission is to collect any information you can on this planet and try to survive in the process. Before you even got a glimpse of your surroundings, there's one thing you'd need to figure out. It's the gravity of the planet you landed on. Sure, it could be just like back home, but the chances of that would be pretty low. Realistically, this world's gravity would be something you'd need to get used to. It could be lower than on Earth, and you'd feel lighter. Over time, it would make your vision blurred, your muscles shrink, and your back hurt. A lot. But if it was stronger than on Earth, well, you'd feel heavier. And maybe it would even be strong enough to keep you pinned to the ground or even break your bones. Next, you'd need to find out what kind of star this alien planet is orbiting and where in the star system it's positioned. There's a high chance that you'd be on an exoplanet orbiting the most common type of star in the universe, a red dwarf. Many of the 4,000 exoplanets we've discovered orbit these. But red dwarfs are smaller and cooler than our own sun, so the planet you've landed on would have to orbit its star at a distance much closer than Earth orbits the sun. At least if you wanted it to be habitable, with liquid water on the surface. But being this close could result in a harsh environment. If the star was only a few billion years old, you'd need ways to protect yourself from the high-energy blasts of ultraviolet and X-ray radiation. If you couldn't shield yourself, you'd need to seek shelter underground. Otherwise, you'd suffer from long-term radiation exposure. This would cause cataracts, make you sterile, and greatly increase your risk of cancer. While you're observing the star, you need to take note of whether there's a sunrise and sunset, or is it that the sun never seems to move in the sky? This would be another danger of being so close to its star. Your new home planet could be tidally locked. This means that one side of the world would always experience daylight and the other side would always be shrouded in darkness. And it wouldn't just be a matter of light and dark, it would also mean that one side would be scorching hot and the other would be freezing cold. You'd be on a planet caught between two extremes, and your best bet for surviving would be to head toward the Terminator line. This would be the thin strip of land between the day side and the night side. Here, you'd have a Goldilocks situation where it's not too hot and not too cold. But you'd also have the incredible treat of never-ending dusk and dawn. The next thing you'd want to assess is whether you'd have an atmosphere that you could breathe. Just because it's in the habitable zone wouldn't mean it's habitable for you. You'd need oxygen. Lucky for you, astronomers found that exoplanets with breathable air are more common than you might think. But keep your oxygen tank close by as you experiment with breathing out there. As an astronaut, you've already been exposed to many of the hardships that come with the job, like living with different levels of gravity, various magnetic fields, and, of course, psychological stress. But landing on an alien planet, you'd have a few more things to add to the list. If you had a weakened immune system, you could be vulnerable to infection from microorganisms we've never seen before. That would make you patient zero on a planet where you'd be the closest thing to a doctor. Researchers suggest that all kinds of lethal bacteria or viruses could survive in the extremely harsh conditions of space. So you'd need to take precautions. And not even just for your own protection, but for the possible life on this alien planet. You'd be carrying who knows how many pathogens and microorganisms from back on Earth. These could kill or wipe out organisms that you haven't even detected yet. Speaking of which, could there be life on this planet you've crashed into? Well, if you wanted to find out, your best bet would be to head to the nearest source of water. Don't get overly excited just yet. The most likely possibility is that you'd only discover microorganisms, but that wouldn't completely rule out the chances that intelligent life could be waiting for you around any corner. If you did make first contact with an intelligent life form, the first thing you'd have to do would be to try communicating with it. After all, you wouldn't want to make the most amazing discovery in human history only for them to kill you out of fear or aggression. You could try using Linkos. A Dutch mathematician invented this language in the 1960s, and he meant it for one purpose only: to speak with aliens. You'd start slow and develop the language further so both you and the aliens can understand. First, you'd need to make sure that they grasp the concept of numbers, and then you'd move on to complex concepts like love or death. But the chances would be higher that you would land on a planet with seemingly no intelligent life. You'd be all alone. No humans or aliens to talk to. Spending thousands of hours in total isolation, you could eventually suffer from hallucinations and hear voices in your head. This would be your new reality. But all of this wouldn't change the fact that you want to survive. You'd have to keep your wits about you and put any planetary resources you can find to use. You might not be back home for a while, and in the meantime, you'd still have to eat. If there were any alien life forms walking past you, you might start looking at them like they're cartoon roast chickens. What if the moon was more than just a lifeless rock? Under that bright light, it could be hiding an alien civilization. When did this alien life begin on the moon? What would these lunar dwellers breathe? And what would our neighbors look like? This is What If? And here's what would happen if aliens lived on the moon. Until Galileo showed up on the scene with his telescope, all we knew about the moon was that it was bright and shiny. While we certainly know more now, its origins are still a mystery. Yeah, we still don't know how the moon became, well, the moon. Some scientists think a chunk of the Earth broke off about 4.5 billion years ago after a violent collision with another planet. All the debris eventually came together to form this body. And the moon landing in 1969 did more than inspire humanity to reach the stars. It made this rock something real to humans everywhere. But we didn't stay for long, so what if the astronauts missed something big up there? The lunar surface is a rough place to live. Without an atmosphere, there's no protection from the sun's radiation, or even a way to keep oxygen on the ground. But maybe it wasn't always like this. After that piece of Earth broke off, microscopic life like cyanobacteria could have survived in this harsh environment. We call this the panspermia theory, the idea that life can be transferred by meteoroids, asteroids, or even spaceships. Considering the moon orbits us in the habitable zone, there could have been a time billions of years ago when it had fresh water. And volcanic activity could have released the gases needed to sustain life. So why isn't there life there now? Well, who's to say there isn't? When these conditions existed, the moon could have incubated life for hundreds of millions of years before humans existed. While dinosaurs roamed our planet, the moon could have been teeming with life that would look stranger than some of those behemoths. The moon's magnetic field is a fraction as powerful as the Earth's, so over millions of years, solar winds stripped away all of its atmosphere. With nothing to protect it, life on the surface would have to adapt to survive the sun's intense rays. On Earth, melanin in our skin protects us from ultraviolet rays, but instead of having a darker skin tone, the moon aliens could have developed new colors. Carotenoids are organic pigments found in vegetables like carrots, and they contain cells that protect against skin cancer. If the aliens evolved to have carotenoids instead of melanin, they might have tough orange skin that would resist the dangerous UV rays around them. And the differences don't end there. Since the moon's gravity is only 1/6 of that on Earth, these aliens could get around by jumping or gliding. But without an atmosphere holding oxygen on the surface, what would these creatures breathe? Well, even with an atmosphere that's only 1/100th as thick as ours, that doesn't mean that life can't exist. Recently, scientists have found a parasite that doesn't need oxygen to live. Maybe over millions of years, these aliens could have evolved in the same way, without breathing, well, anything. Now, while this diversity of life might exist on the surface, you couldn't say the same for the lunar oceans. I mean, if they existed. While the average ocean on Earth goes down 3.7 kilometers, the moon's seas would only have a depth of 1 kilometer. There's not much that could be found in these waters. But if life did exist on the moon, how would that have changed our history? Well, if these aliens had evolved before humanity, they might have visited us before we landed on the moon. And if they had waited until after the space race, the increasing tensions of the Cold War might never have happened. Instead, humans could have united in fear over an invasion from a superior life form. The militaries around the globe would have deployed countermeasures to assess the threats these visitors pose. And as scientists and politicians tried to communicate with our celestial neighbors, everyone else would be hunkered down, bracing for the worst. You know, sharing our corner of the solar system with a much more advanced civilization might be overwhelming, but it's either that or an all-out war. And considering how much more evolved these aliens are, we might want to think of a peaceful solution. Or hey, we might get along so well that eventually our two species could become one. What if you took it to the extreme and mated with an alien?
It was love at first sight, wasn't it? Wasn't it, Doodle?
It's a beautiful night. Just you, a bottle of wine, and your partner, drifting through the cosmos in a UFO. As you caress their green skin, you know that tonight's the night you're mating with an alien. But would your anatomy be compatible? How would conception take place? And what would your child look like? This is What If, and here's what would happen if you mated with an alien. Okay, so maybe an intimate alien encounter wouldn't work out that way. But if you believe the statistics, 6% of Americans have allegedly been abducted by aliens. According to these victims, the experiences were intrusive and horrifying. Why would an alien want to mate with a human? Well, if these aliens wanted to settle on Earth, interbreeding could speed up the process. Yeah, the child would have the best of both worlds. Combining our DNA could create a hybrid being that could survive in the hottest climates. And maybe your kids would get the intelligence of an alien. They flew across the universe in a tin plate. They have to be a little bright. But even if your offspring became a genius, would society ever accept them? Hybridization occurs when two different species breed, and it's more common than you might think. We crossbreed fruits and animals all the time, but this isn't like your mom's labradoodle. You would be mating with a being from another galaxy, so what are the consequences of this pairing? Well, first, forget the wine and dine scenario from before. The only way you could mate with ET would be through artificial insemination. After all of our parts may not be compatible. So whether your seed was placed in an alien or vice versa, medical procedures would be the only way to bring your child into this world. Unfortunately, the real threat to this kid's health could lie within you. Sometimes, a mother's blood can produce antibodies that destroy their baby's blood cells. In humans, we call this condition rhesus disease. Introducing a completely different blood type and DNA into a human mother could trigger their immune system to reject this perceived alien intruder. And if their body kept the baby alive long enough to fully form, the next challenge would be getting it out. A childbirth with human babies can be difficult enough. A hybrid birth would definitely cause complications. To keep the baby hybrid and its mother safe during labor, doctors would have to perform a cesarean section. Yeah, those big gray heads aren't getting through a birth canal, provided those are some of the physical features your baby would have. The first generation of hybrids would still look like their alien side of the family, but the second generation could look so close to humans you may not even tell the difference. They might be able to blend into a crowd. Although our entire society could change with aliens walking among us. And this may not be the first time humans have mated outside our species in modern history. Yeah, rumors still float around about Florida scientists who artificially inseminated a chimpanzee with human DNA in the 1920s. While we may never know the truth behind this experiment, were it true, this humanzee would have been an ethical nightmare. Cool name though. A human-alien hybrid could hold the answer to our survival on a changing Earth, or even beyond the stars. The cultural and physical differences might be too much to accept at first. Remember, we all still carry the genes of Neanderthals in our DNA, the last traces of this long-extinct species that lived alongside humans tens of thousands of years ago. But hey, we got over that problem.
We are Venom.
What do you get when you take an alien parasite and smush it together with a human being? Would you get to become a supercharged, head-eating anti-hero like Venom? Or would you die a slow and painful death? I never thought I'd say this, but I think I prefer to be the guy who eats people's heads off.
I have a parasite.
Today, you're getting infected with your very own alien parasite. How would it mess with your brain? Would you lose control of your body? And what's it like to share a body with Venom?
You are a loser.
This is What If, and here's what would happen if you got infected by an alien parasite. With the release of Venom, Let There Be Carnage, we've been thinking non-stop about symbiotes. But before we infect you with a parasite from outer space, let's introduce you to your body's new roommate. Venom is a sentient, amorphous alien parasite called a symbiote. Symbiotes infect and hijack their hosts' bodies, taking on portions of their host's personality. For example, you throw one on a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, you get an edgy web slinger. If you do the same to a serial killer, you're gonna get something like Carnage. Thankfully, the relationship between Venom and his human host, Eddie Brock, is more akin to an old married couple. A very dangerous old married couple. But you? We're not sure you'll be so lucky. First, the symbiote would make its way into your brain. What would Venom do up there? Well, we may find our answer in a parasite that didn't come from outer space, but from cat poop. Toxoplasma gondii, aka the feline parasite, is a microscopic neurological parasite known for altering the behavior of sheep, goats, pigs, cows, rats, and, well, yeah, cats. While in the stomach of their carrier host, the itty-bitty parasite eggs called oocytes morph into dangerous microbes called tachyzoites. Next, the parasite starts setting up shop in your body and makes a move on your brain. Studies have shown that rats infected with Toxoplasma gondii have their brains so rewired by the parasite that it causes them to get a little frisky when they smell cats. Which, as you can guess, goes about as well as trying to get a smooch from Carnage. And if that wasn't freaky enough, did you know that This parasite may have already infected 30% of the human population, including 60 million Americans. Yeah, ever since the start of the 20th century, when we started getting into cats as pets, as the number of domesticated kitties grew, so did cases of schizophrenia. Researchers have linked this spike to an increase in the presence of Toxoplasma gondii in humans. Well, your parasite didn't want to be buddies like venom. It wants to use you as food, kind of like the cordyceps fungus. You know, that super disturbing zombie ant fungi? When the cordyceps fungus takes over an ant, it forces that little worker to bite down on a leaf and stay put until it dies. In the meantime, the parasite feeds off the ant for 3 weeks, growing out of the ant's head and creating more infectious spores. This wouldn't look good for you either. With your infection, the parasite would know that you're smarter than some blue-collar worker ant, meaning it wouldn't try to take over your nervous system. Instead, it would go right to taking control of your muscles, all while you helplessly watch. So, it seems sharing your body with a parasite isn't quite the comic book adventure Venom makes it out to be. And if it's anything like the Loa Loa eye worm, it sounds terrifying. Measuring up to 10 millimeters in length, the eye worm can hide away in the human tissue anywhere from 10 to 15 years. Yeah, it also does this cute little thing where it squirms across your eyeball, leaving larvae in its wake. If these larvae get close enough to your thinker, you could develop brain disease like encephalopathy. So, if you do find yourself infected with an alien parasite, we'd recommend holding off starting your life as a superhero and maybe take a trip to your nearest emergency room instead. Attention human, you are receiving an interstellar radio transmission, and it could be coming from one of the nearest exoplanets, Proxima Centauri b. What conditions make this planet a candidate for alien life? What types of civilizations could have flourished there? And should we expect them to be knocking on Earth's door any day now? This is What If, and here's what would happen if there were an alien civilization on Proxima b. At a distance of 4.2 light-years away, Proxima Centauri is one of the closest stars to our Sun. In 2016, a planet was discovered orbiting in Proxima Centauri's Goldilocks zone. That's where conditions for liquid water could exist. Meet Proxima b, a planet that registers at 0.87 on the Earth Similarity Index. This scale measures how similar a planet or moon is to Earth, and anything above 0.8 is considered Earth-like. As another example, Mars has an ESI of 0.64. In 2020, astronomers recorded a mysterious radio signal coming from the direction of Proxima Centauri. Could it be that an alien civilization was attempting to contact us? Though Proxima b is similar to Earth, life forms on this alien planet would likely develop very differently. For starters, the planet is about 20 times closer to its star than Earth is to the Sun, and it only needs 11.2 days for one full revolution. That's a lot of New Year's celebrations. But still, Proxima b receives about the same amount of solar energy as Earth. And that's because Proxima Centauri is an M-type red dwarf star. Compared to our G-type star, these stars are generally cooler, in a range of 2200 to 3200 degrees Celsius. But there would be some extreme conditions that an alien civilization would have to adapt to. These extraterrestrials would need to be able to withstand radiation, and lots of it. The planet receives about 400 times more X-rays than Earth, and dwarf stars like Proxima Centauri give rise to coronal mass ejections that would blast the planet with lethal radiation. Without a protective atmosphere, this would be deadly for any potential life forms. Another challenge for a Proxima b civilization would be tidal locking. That's when a planet takes the same amount of time to spin on its axis as it does to orbit its star. Imagine living where you permanently face the scorching sun while the other side of the Earth is in a constant state of frozen darkness. This is what life would be like on this exoplanet. Civilizations on Proxima b would likely develop in the so-called terminator zones. These are the strips of twilight between the day side and the night side. Here, winds would carry warm air and create life-supporting conditions. And aliens would build thermal reactors with the mix of cool and hot water to have that H2O always available. But if civilizations appeared on either of the sides of the Terminator Zone, they'd need to develop different survival tactics. But collaboration and unity could allow them to supply each other with heat or ice effectively. And if a civilization developed on the light side, would they even know that there were other stars or objects in the universe? Would they even think about other life out in space? That brings us back to the radio signal the Breakthrough Listen project recorded in 2020. This signal occupied a very narrow band of the radio spectrum at 982 megahertz. This is startling because it's a portion of the spectrum rarely used by human-made transmitters. Researchers haven't ruled out the possibility that these signals originated on Earth, but there are many unanswered questions. One thing they're sure of, it didn't come from a natural world. Only manufactured or alien-made technology seems to produce signals like that. So, if an advanced civilization was trying to communicate with us from Proxima b, what would their society be like? They could be a Type 1 civilization like us and use the energy available from their planet, like oil, wind, or geothermal power. Or they could be a Type 2 civilization, using energy on the scale of their planetary system. That would mean they were thousands of years more advanced than us. Would they have developed complex languages and live in cities? Would they have democratic forms of governance? Or would they live under the rule of a dictator? You must have so many questions for our alien neighbors, and they would have so many questions for you. Or maybe they already know everything. Unfortunately, we likely won't be able to visit them anytime soon. Using current technologies, it would still take between 19,000 and 81,000 years to reach them. Just north of the Martian equator lies a 45-kilometer-wide impact crater that scientists believe may have been the site of an ancient lake. Here at Jezero Crater, scientists theorize that its frozen soil may contain the most significant discovery of humankind: life. On February 18th, 2021, NASA's Perseverance rover started searching this crater to find out if we're truly alone. What is the likelihood of life on Mars? What would these Martians look like? And how will we send samples back to Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we discovered life on Mars? As Scientific American puts it, it would take a near miracle for Mars to be sterile. Astrobiologist Chris McKay at NASA believes that Earth and Mars have been sharing materials for billions of years. Kind of like using your roommate's spice rack. What? I thought you said it was communal. Comets or large meteorites that have hit Earth may have also sent debris onto Mars. A tiny fraction of this debris on Mars could have carried the same microbes that kick-started life as we know it on Earth. But what would this alien life look like? Many scientists agree that whatever life on Mars we might find would need to be incredibly robust. With the combination of radiation and freezing temperatures on Mars, could any life form survive such a harsh environment? As far-fetched as it sounds, microbiologists have discovered many organisms that thrive in extreme environments. The tardigrade, or water bear, is a highly resistant extremophile. It can withstand heat, cold, pressure, radiation, and even a complete lack of oxygen. There are also certain types of bacteria on Earth that rapidly produce spores when faced with hazardous conditions. The bacteria can then hibernate during an extended period of drought and withstand intense ionizing radiation. A team of 1,000 geologists, chemists, physicists, and biologists worldwide have drilled 4.8 kilometers into the Earth and discovered robust life forms. Mars has a similar geological past to Earth, so looking underground could be a great place to start. By drilling into the Jezero crater, we could encounter spores associated with a relatively recent geological era. And on future missions to Mars, we may dig deeper and uncover fully vegetative microbes. To find rock samples that might support life, NASA's Perseverance rover uses an array of lasers called a supercam. It can study the surface of Mars at a distance. One of the lasers will heat a rock sample and vaporize it. This creates a plasma that can be analyzed to understand its elemental composition. Another laser will reveal which compounds are in the dirt. If the supercam detects organic molecules or elevated concentrations of elements like nitrogen or phosphorus, the rover will head over to take a closer look. It will then scan the soil in greater detail to detect any organic material hiding in the dirt. NASA's team on Earth has only one shot at picking the right spot to gather these samples. With limited space on board the rover, only a few dozen samples can be collected. So, no pressure and fingers crossed. If all goes well, NASA plans to bring back samples known for preserving biosignatures on Earth. Biosignatures are faint molecular traces left behind by microbes billions of years ago. Once the samples are collected, NASA and the European Space Agency plan 2 missions to get them back to Earth. This involves blasting tubes of rock and soil samples into orbit to be collected by another spacecraft and then returned to Earth. Whoa, this looks kind of fun. If Perseverance's mission is successful, the discovery of life on Mars would be as groundbreaking as the discovery of DNA. In 1543, Copernicus boldly shook the status quo with his theory that the planets orbited the sun. His discoveries completely changed our worldview, no longer putting Earth at the center of the universe. Discovering life beyond Earth could be just as powerful. But not finding any life could raise more questions. Is the Earth truly special? Are we alone out here? Even if we don't discover life, these Martian rock samples will allow chemists to study the geochemistry, mineralogy, and foundational bedrock materials of Mars in detail. This could provide us with essential insights into the climate history of Mars and help us better understand Earth's climate as well. In 1976, 2 Viking landers became the first spacecrafts from Earth to touch down on Mars. They too probed for life in the Martian soil, and the results are still debated to this day. One experiment indicated that the Martian soil tested positive for metabolism. On Earth, this would almost certainly suggest the presence of life. But another related experiment found no trace of organic material whatsoever. While most scientists have not reconciled the conflicting results, the consensus is that there's no conclusive evidence of life on Mars. But several researchers disagree. Recent discoveries of terrestrial microorganisms surviving outside of the ISS indicate that life may be resilient enough for Mars. And methane in the Martian atmosphere could be a sign of microbial methanogens, a type of microorganism that produces a significant amount of methane. Stinky aliens. Mind you, it's possible that life on Mars didn't have the right conditions to start at all. Or maybe it died off from an extinction event, similar to the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. Or it's even possible that we might end up finding life that was accidentally brought to Mars by one of our many rovers. Let's hope this Perseverance mission doesn't turn into a $2.7 billion facepalm. If Mars is your bag, well, have you ever thought about setting up shop there? With recent developments in rocketry, colonizing Mars might be possible in our lifetime.
This just in. Visitors from beyond the stars have arrived. What secrets could our intergalactic friends share? What wonders could these space chums unveil?
They do not come in peace. The aliens have arrived, and they're here to lay down the law. Humans are no longer at the top of the food chain, and we're now at the mercy of our alien overlords. I, for one, welcome our alien overlords. What would our new alien masters do with us? And why did they invade Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we became enslaved by aliens. For centuries, humans have been calling the shots on Earth. Just ask the animals we use as food, keep in zoos, hunt for sport, or even have around the house as pets. We're in for quite the shock when our new intergalactic masters show up and give us a taste of our own medicine. What exactly would they do to us? Well, we may become the new animals. We'd be treated as a commodity to be bought, traded, and sold. And if these aliens are anything like we are, we'd also be their lunch. Human cells are made up of proteins, nucleic acids, and membranes. If the aliens had the same basic biochemistry as us, they would be able to convert our tasty, nourishment-filled bodies into energy for themselves. Would aliens start farming us en masse? What sort of intergalactic economy could be created by using humans like livestock? In China alone, the pork industry is worth $128 billion and has 433 million pigs ready to barbecue. There are 17 times as many humans on the planet. To an alien food connoisseur, would we be just as tasty? Human burger, anyone? What if we were seen as a delicacy to be distributed across the universe? Or what about just pieces of human? Even to us, body parts are a hot commodity. A heart is $1.4 million to transplant and worth $119,000 on the open market. Kidneys are around the $200,000 mark. Livers are $157,000 and bone marrow is $23,000 a gram. we're dealing with human economics here, but this idea can be applied to the concept that we are Earth's new cattle. We're a living organism that might be sold to someone or something somewhere in space. But what if the aliens didn't think we were delicious? What if they thought we were cute? Well, in the US, there are nearly 70 million dogs being kept as pets and 74 million cats. Brazil has 191 million feathered best friends. Would the aliens keep us as pets? Or even worse, what if they kept us in captivity and gawked at us? You know, like we do with animals in zoos. There are approximately 6,000 species in zoos around the world, about 8 million animals in total. The aliens may not have as much variety in human zoos, but we sure are an entertaining bunch. Imagine a group of alien children on a school trip, watching you in your natural habitat. "See, children," lectures the alien headmistress, "the human is on its phone again." So there's not a lot to look forward to. But it makes us think about what the aliens would get out of Earth in the first place. Well, the Earth looks like a nice place to set up shop. On paper, Earth has plate tectonics that help to keep the climate stable, a global magnetic field that keeps solar winds from getting close, and the added bonus of a moon that stops Earth from wobbling on its axis too much. That combination would look appealing to the aliens, and it's something they might have a difficult time finding anywhere else. And what about us? Well, we already know we'd not only be delicious, but profitable. With the aliens having a monopoly on the human market, they could start making more rewarding changes to their new home. Considering that they're intelligent enough to travel light years to get here, how hard could it be to redevelop a planet? The truth is, we don't know for sure what the aliens' plans would be. This is only one of several scenarios that could happen if we faced an alien invasion. Scientists have pieced together a pretty clear picture of what life was like on Earth thousands, even millions of years ago. But if you fast forward 1 million years from now, would alien civilization be doing the same to learn about us? What would Earth look like 1 million years from now? What remains of human civilization would still be around? And would we end up clones in a human version of Jurassic Park? This is What If. And here's what would happen if aliens came to Earth 1 million years in the future. We're living in the Anthropocene epoch, and in this historical period, the human impact on the world around us has been significant enough to geologically alter it. 100 years from now, it could be an era defined by ecological collapse and mass extinction. Big bummer, right? Now, there's no way for us to know how or when our species may take its final walk on our home planet. A team of alien scientists could find evidence of nuclear fallout, climate change, or maybe a massive asteroid that ended our existence. Or maybe they'd even find us already living on another planet. Maybe 1 million years from now, you'd be an alien on board a starship that has just entered into orbit around Earth.
I can't tell if you're joking or not.
But despite your best efforts to scan the planet below for intelligent life, you'd find nothing. Your trip down to the surface would be slightly delayed by an ongoing supervolcanic eruption. The planet would be blanketed in the darkness of ash. You might even have to wait a few years for your alien crew to clean it up before you could even land. Finally, you'd get approval to visit Earth. Down there, you'd find everything to be barren and lifeless. Storms, fires and earthquakes would have erased nearly all signs of immediately visible life. But your team of archaeologists and paleontologists would know that if they wanted to find evidence of past civilizations, they better start digging. You'd be investigating what are called boundary layers. These are geological signatures that indicate a transition from one period to the next. So you'd be looking for animal and plant fossils, as well as changes in rock layers. You could find a thin layer of clay that marks the boundary to our Anthropocenic era. The top layer would contain not much more than small fossilized remains of a few plant species. The layer below would contain older rock, but not only that, there would be an abundance of diverse plant fossils. This would be a breakthrough for your team, as they'd now confirm there was some form of mass extinction period. As you searched through this layer, the nature of what happened to Earth over the past million years would be revealed. You'd discover an unnatural amount of carbon deposits from fossil fuel emissions, evidence of global temperature changes, and widespread chemical pollutants. But the effects of climate change may have reversed themselves over the 1 million years humans have been absent. If your team were to uncover the regions where our coastal populations used to be, you could excavate the remains of cities relatively well preserved in the sedimentary rock. Imagine discovering the ancient subway tunnels and sewers of New York. But nothing you would find would be in pristine condition. Bricks would have gone from their characteristic red to gray, and steel would have rusted and dissolved, leaving only imprints in the soil. Finally, you'd make the biggest discovery of all: fossilized human bones. Just like the dinosaurs, these too would most likely only be found encased in sedimentary rock. Almost all of the fossils of dinosaurs that we discover today are from species that would have lived near lakes or rivers that flooded. Floods covered their remains in mud and silt very quickly, and this prevented their bones from rotting. The same would apply to Homo sapiens. Your alien team would piece together the puzzle that many of these human fossils were the result of catastrophic floods or tsunamis. And based on how much these bones have fused with the rocks around them, your team could start to assemble a timeline of our unfortunate demise. Usually, bones take decades to decompose. If buried in a dry environment like a funeral casket, they could last for 100 years. Mummified bones can survive thousands of years. Finding any of these would tell your team that the last humans to walk the Earth weren't all that far in the past. But discovering only fossilized remains would reveal our extinction point being further back than you'd hoped. There wouldn't be any samples of soft tissues like muscles, just rocks that used to be bones. Oh, but you'd probably find fossilized plastic in the layers of sedimentary rock too. It's not yet known how long plastic waste needs to decompose into organic matter. It could take hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Or, as you and your crew could discover, millions. What you'd keep your hopes up for would be the real Holy Grail: human DNA. The oldest DNA samples found in our modern times date back 800,000 years and come from insects and plants. But studies conclude that DNA could take about 7 million years to disintegrate. And eureka! You'd find human DNA samples trapped in ice cores in what was once Greenland. Now, the big question would be, what do you do with them? Study human genetics for scientific purposes, or have a little fun? One idea would be to clone these ancient humans. You could even create some kind of Jurassic Park filled with people, except it would be called Anthropocene Park. And based on all that you'd put together about our tragic history, there would be so many entertaining things to do in this amusement park. Maybe you could clone other animals and play a game of mass extinction. The winner would be the one who could kill the most species in the shortest amount of time. You could dig for hidden oil reserves, increase carbon emissions for fun to watch icebergs melt. Or how about a game of nuclear war? Sadly though, you and the other scientists probably wouldn't be able to figure out what life was like for humans at the end of our civilization. We might not be alone in the universe. Scientists from all over the world have their eyes and ears wide open trying to detect signals of life beyond our planet. But we're a bit tired of just sitting and waiting. So hop on our spacecraft because today you have a very important mission: to search for alien life. How would we prepare for this journey? What kind of life would we be looking for? And what would happen if we found it? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we went on a search for alien life. So far, we've detected over 4,000 exoplanets in our galaxy, and there may be as many as trillions. To make your expedition easier, you'd need to consult with NASA first. NASA has developed the Confidence of Life Detection Scale, or COLD, to measure progress in life detection research. The scale has 7 levels, ranging from signal detection to follow-up studies once life beyond Earth is confirmed. First, you'd need to look for biosignatures. This is physical evidence of past or present life on another planet, such as chemical compounds or molecules that indicate biological processes. If an alien astronomer was taking measurements of Earth, they'd look for oxygen and methane. Those are biosignatures that indicate life on our planet. If you're a celestial technology geek, you might scan for technosignatures. These are signs showing the negative uses of technology that cause artificial air pollution. This means aliens could figure out we exist because of all that smog we send into the atmosphere. Embarrassing, right? Now that you know what to look for, where would you look for it? You could start this search in our own cosmic backyard. Alien life could be hiding on the subsurface oceans of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or deep beneath the surface of Mars. Ground telescopes have already detected methane on Mars, sending probes to measure surface levels. That already puts you on the second level of the cold scale. Or you could go further and look for alien life on rocky planets outside our solar system. You'd need to locate planets orbiting a star in its habitable zone. That's the area where a planet is not too close to the star and not too far, allowing for temperatures to be just right for liquid water to form. Scientists have already done the hard work for you here. Using the Kepler Object of Interest Exoplanet Archive, researchers identified systems that might have rocky planets that meet the criteria. They found 24 super-habitable planets. And one of them is very promising. KOI 5715.01 is roughly 1 billion years older than Earth, which means it's had enough time for life to develop. Scientists estimate that the best chance of discovering life is on planets between 5 and 8 billion years old. That makes KOI 5715.01 a perfect candidate. Now, while it's a bit cooler than our planet, it could support life if it contained enough greenhouse gases. Okay, so let's say you detected biosignatures on KOI 5715.01. Now, you've got yourself a potentially habitable exoplanet. NASA would then have to confirm that there were no measurement errors and that the planet really has the potential to host life. The next step would be to predict what type of source could generate such a signal. scientists would need to confirm this signature couldn't have come from a non-biological source. Once that was done, you'd be on level 4 of the cold scale. At this level, scientists would test the signal with other advanced measurement methods. NASA's powerful James Webb Space Telescope would confirm the exoplanet contains a strong signature for life. And you would be able to proudly say you found alien life. And then scientists would be able to kickstart follow-up studies at level 7. That means you'd now be ready to fasten your seatbelt and see these aliens for yourself. But how would you get there? Yeah, that's when things get tricky. KOI 5715.01 is located almost 3,000 light years away from us. That's 700 times further away than Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our solar system. If we used developing ionic propulsion engines, it would take over 55 million years to get there. Wow. You'd have to make use of some futuristic solutions, like a laser sail. This technology uses ultra-thin mirrors to capture the momentum of light from stars and then uses this momentum to push a spacecraft to high speeds. If you managed to build laser sails with diameters of 320 kilometers, you might be able to reach KOI 5715.01 in about 8,500 years. Setting aside the fact that you wouldn't live that long, what would you find once you got there? Alien life could be extremely complex or very basic, and the alien's appearance would depend on the world they evolved on. Things like gravity, density, and the amount of energy given off by its star. They would probably have something that resembles fingers or tentacles to build tools. And since 2 legs and 2 arms are more efficient than 4 legs, the aliens might have evolved to walk upright. You want to invite them for a stroll? Well, first, you'd need to figure out their... While your journey to find alien life might be successful in our hypothetical story, in reality, it's still very far-fetched. With technology evolving to detect signals from outer space, we might be able to identify them at some point, but there would still be the issue of getting to them. This not-so-little piece of equipment could change astronomy forever. And it could be about to find alien life, maybe in a matter of days. What is this powerful new tool? How could it detect life in galaxies far away? And if it does find life, what would happen next? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the James Webb Telescope found alien life. The James Webb Space Telescope launched into space on December 25th, 2021. Its mission? To study the history of our universe. From the afterglow of the Big Bang to the formation of solar systems like our own. This large infrared telescope is 100 times more powerful than the Hubble telescope. It has 18 separate mirror-and-a-half million kilometers away from the Earth. It should be able to see us first. If you were looking for signs of life on distant exoplanets, you wouldn't look for little green aliens. You'd look for biosignatures. In other words, characteristics in a planet's atmosphere that could be evidence of life in the past or present. Imagine an alien astronomer from a distant galaxy pointing a telescope toward Earth. The biosignatures they'd make note of are the presence of oxygen and methane in our atmosphere. Without life forms breathing these 2 gases in and out, these elements would react with others and disappear. So the James Webb Telescope will look for the presence of oxygen and methane too. First, you'd need to detect the presence of an exoplanet around a distant star. You could do this through the transit method. As a planet passes in front of a star, you'd observe its light slightly diminishing. After that planet passes in front of its star many times, you'd have enough data to take measurements of its atmosphere. You'd be able to see how much light goes through its atmosphere, and you could determine what atmospheric elements exist there based on the way the light disperses. With a telescope as powerful as the Webb, you could gather enough data after a planet has passed its star as few as 5 to 10 times. Yeah, so after only 20 hours of investigating a planet, you could detect conditions for life. But then what?
100% for sure gonna die!
Well, you probably wouldn't go public with this information right away. You'd probably want to follow the confidence of life detection scale, commonly referred to as COLD. This is an approach that scientists at NASA are looking to establish. It would set up a new framework for discussing how close we are to finding life beyond our planet. The scale would have 7 levels. Level 1 would be the detection of biosignatures. As more data is collected, you'd climb the scale to level 7. At this point, you'd likely find alien life. And that's when the whole world freaks out and powerful aliens beam down to conquer our planet. Right? Not exactly. If we discover life using the Webb Telescope, it would be more than likely that we are the powerful, intelligent beings. The bombshell announcement of alien life would be a lot less dramatic than the movies suggest. It could take decades. Be prepared for a slow progression of countless mini announcements. And remember that the distances between Earth and exoplanets of interest are vast. So if you decided to take an interstellar trip to one of those, like the exoplanet TRAPPIST-1e, it would take you decades. But scientists believe that this planet may have atmospheric conditions similar to ours, or at least similar to the Earth 2.5 to 4 billion years ago. So maybe we could find microscopic life there. A discovery like this would elicit many different reactions. For you, it could be a dream come true, but for others, it could be concerning. It could affect your entire understanding of life in the universe.
Are we alone in the universe? With more than 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, and at least 500 billion planets in the Milky Way alone, don't you think we should have found something by now? Even if a tiny percentage of those billions of planets hosted intelligent life, there would be tens of thousands of extraterrestrial civilizations out there. Yet, we haven't seen any. Where is everybody? We keep wondering what's taking them so long to come. But what if I told you that even the friendliest of all aliens could wipe out our entire civilization for good? This is What If, and here's what would happen if aliens visited us tomorrow. We tend to apply our theories to the rest of the universe. We expect aliens to come for a visit, even though we ourselves haven't traveled out of our own neighborhood yet. We just believe that they've had so much more time for technological progress to make space travel possible. So here they are, with their shiny alien spaceship roving above our heads. What would we do? As far as we know, no government on this planet has any sort of alien greeting party planned if aliens suddenly showed up on the horizon. Just try to keep cool. Say the aliens happened to be very polite and sent us a signal before invading our planet's personal space. Well, you wouldn't know it right away. Not until several observatories maintained by different organizations verified that signal. Yep, that's it. Aliens are here, now you know. You got this shocking news from your TV.
NASA officially confirmed
An alien ship detected in the solar system, not alone in the universe.
Agencies and countries around the world would be working together, quickly trying to assess the level of threat. They'd summon experts in linguistics, psychology, combat, and biology, and have them attempt to make first contact with the aliens. Groups of experts would record all interactions to analyze simple alien gestures and auditory reactions. Those would help to decide whether aliens came in peace or they intend to do some serious damage. Some people might believe that religious leaders should do all the talking. Something's telling me that aliens didn't learn our languages in school, so good luck to anyone trying to reach out to them. While the world's most intelligent people were busy trying to interpret the aliens' intentions to the best of their ability, you would be, wait, aren't you curious to know what the aliens look like? Some evolution experts agree that things like proteins and DNA are the same no matter where in the universe you're from. If that's true, alien evolution would be close to that of humans. They'd have binocular vision with eyes located close to the brain. Just like us, they'd be based on land and have a minimum of 2 legs for mobility and 3 fingers so that they could handle tools. Still, if some of our own life forms look like this, try to picture something coming from another planet. Meanwhile, on Earth, while governments were busy figuring out the action plan, the media would be keeping you informed. You'd be advised to stay indoors and wait for further instructions. It'd be hard to filter out what's legitimate news and what isn't, but try not to fall for fake end-of-the-world news on Facebook and keep calm. At least make an effort to give up the urge to pack up your belongings and head for the hills. At the same time, the governments and scientific experts would be sharing information about alien interactions. From here, the events could unfold in a few different ways. First, we may not get any auditory or visual response. Nothing at all. This could mean anything from the alien spacecraft doesn't have any aliens on board to the aliens are waiting for their alien backup to fry us up. Another possibility is that aliens responded and tried to communicate with no weapons involved. I can't speak to their possible intentions. For all we know, they may want to get rid of us and keep the Earth to themselves. Thanks to the language barrier, our interactions might not be going well. Tensions would begin to rise. We'd be screwed. Considering that these beings had the technology to travel to Earth, it's likely that they also had the capability to develop some very, very advanced weaponry. Civilians would most likely be hitting the panic button as hard as possible. Meanwhile, governments would put their nuclear weapons on standby. That would be our best and most destructive weapon against them. Or so we think. It may turn out that the aliens have adverse reactions to things on Earth that we're all accustomed to. If, say, their skin melted upon contact with water, then defending ourselves against them would be simple. I'm not saying aliens would necessarily bring doom upon the Earth. They may not mean us any harm at all. But if some hazardous microorganisms from outer space hitched a ride with them and made it into our world, we humans might have no natural immunity to those extraterrestrial microbes, and they could slowly wipe our species off the planet. On the other hand, if aliens weren't coming here to make friends, we'd be destroyed long before we got a chance to offer peace between intelligent beings. In any case, we aren't ready for a visit from interplanetary travelers. We'd better get prepared for first contact. Or maybe we should try to invade alien worlds before they invade us. But that's a topic for another What If.
Billions of years ago, another planet smashed into Earth. An event of this epicness could have created our moon. It also could have brought